Anyone who has had the pleasure of playing a JRPG knows just how weird they can get. After all, it's the culture which brought us things like the Dakimakura and cuddle cafes. Please, for both of our sakes, don't look up either one of those things on the internet. Just let it go. So, you're a fan of giant robots and tentacle monsters. Well, it seems like you've come to the right place, because there's no judgment here. So subscribe to TheGamer and ring that bell to become a part of our notification squad so you never miss a video. Mother. We weren't sure whether to call this game Mother or Earthbound, since it has an entirely different name in Japan. The Western audiences know this popular JRPG as Earthbound. Released in 1995, the game was beloved for its quirky sense of humor and amazing storyline. The main character, Ness, along with a handful of others, must battle living piles of barf and help two monkeys fall in love. These were just a few of the many strange adventures Ness and his comrades would find themselves encountering. Your only means of defense are a bunch of children's toys like yo-yos, baseball bats, and toy guns. Your enemies are the usual enemies of children: stray dogs, hippies, skateboarders, and titanic ants. Food and remedies for various ailments can also be found around town. If you wait long enough, the fresh eggs will hatch into chicks, and nothing soothes the body better than a cup of life noodles. These are used to cure unconsciousness, poison, nausea, colds, sunstroke, falling asleep, uncontrollable crying, feeling strange, paralysis, and being diamondized. So basically, all of your childhood ailments can be cured with this fancy soup. The game embraces its JRPG genre in a way which also feels distinctly different and bizarrely its own. If you want a game that's both difficult and worthwhile, this JRPG classic might be the answer. Eternal Sonata. There's nothing more strange than a game that makes you, the player, question everything you've ever known. But the biggest question lies in where you draw the line between fiction and reality as the main character in Eternal Sonata. You are playing as legendary composer Frédéric François Chopin, although you're playing it in a state of his own consciousness. As you soon discover, he's merely a few short hours from dying and is currently unconscious. You must unravel the mysteries of this fantastical world he created while also paying homage to his real life. Chopin finds himself in a quest with an intriguing cast of characters where they must explore a fantasy world while battling strange monsters like giant tubas and the great Ezi. Ezi is one of the deities in the game, worshipped alongside God. He's referred to by the locals on a number of occasions and becomes the boss in the Church of Ezi. The locals hint that the deity is said to be the god of many things, including comedy and music, and depending on who is worshipping him, he'll change to suit their needs. He's the only boss who can switch between light and dark forms. Beware of the dark bouncing form of Ezi, as he's quite a tricky match for the group. It really doesn't get much stranger or more bizarre than an entire game based around the dying dreams of a musician. It's also an extremely difficult game, so if you're looking for a challenge, test your skill in Encore mode. If the backstory of this game isn't enough to charm you, then maybe the amazing graphics and music will. AUTOMATA. The story of this game doesn't seem all that peculiar, as the main protagonist is a teenage boy tasked with finding a mysterious artifact to save the world. The artifact has disappeared, no big surprise there, and now the world is facing some major catastrophic damage if he can't get it in time. Now this is the premise of a few RPGs, so it comes as no surprise that they would take this route for AUTOMATA. Mix in some strange characters, inner demons, and deadly computer viruses, and you've got a really great JRPG on your hands. The game is set on the planet RCL. It lost most of the land due to a man-made catastrophe. The members of this race, called the RECETTEAR, use a special ability called song magic. But the people are forced to live on 3 gigantic, tower-like structures made after the land was lost. They've lost communication with regions of RCL which form the rest of the planet. Now, this loss of communication eventually makes the race believe that there's nowhere else in the entire world besides these structures where they live. There is a lot to this game, including the fact that female magic users must have special crystals inserted into their bodies to survive. Add that to the fact that AUTOMATA games require you to play through alternative universe fanfiction in order to learn new spells, and it all takes place inside the main character's mind. There's just quite a bit of weirdness surrounding this game, which we aren't afraid to admit we enjoyed. Shadow Hearts, from the New World. Shadow Hearts should be right up your alley if you're a fan of a mix of comedic and bizarre creatures trying to live out historical events like World War I in a completely perplexing way. So we decided to add From the New World to this list because it uses its odd humor to make the early 1900s of Depression America era seem at least somewhat bearable. Our main character is Johnny Garland, a 16-year-old orphan living in New York City who just had to deal with the painful blow of his sister and father's deaths. He decides to take the family business over, a detective agency. You would think with his sharp wit and knack for adventures, Johnny would excel at his job. Unfortunately, he discovers the jobs are pretty small. That is until a Boston professor arrives full of mystery and intrigue. The job seems pretty routine as he asks Johnny to locate a man. A portal opens up, revealing a monster who makes a snack out of Johnny's newest and most intriguing assignment. So if you're a fan of history mixed with a bit of bizarreness and fantasy, this game is a must-play. Plus, you get to go on a great adventure, meeting plenty of strange characters along the way as you try to solve the murder of the professor, some other shady murder cases, and Johnny's own clouded past in the meantime. You might even learn a thing or two about yourself along the way. NIER AUTOMATA. Okay, so when the game designer decides to have a talk with fans of NIER AUTOMATA titled Weird Games for Weird People, you know exactly what you're getting into. And with Yoko Taro's eccentric persona spearheading the entire game design of NIER AUTOMATA, you know you're in for one wild ride. NIER AUTOMATA is one of the strangest and most complex games we've ever played, with a mixture of heartbreak and humor. It's the weirdness which keeps us coming back for more. It's interesting that the game should feel so human when it's a game without humans, but the story does a great job at reminding us of the emotions we've all experienced. The setting unfolds to show us being in a proxy war between humans living on the moon in exile and alien invaders, which are fought by robots on both sides. You're shown in the beginning how pointless the conflict is, and eventually everyone is gone except for the robot proxies. The latest generation of robots are sent to Earth to take it back, even though they haven't seen or heard from their master humans in centuries. However, they have a job to finish anyway. When the smarter, more powerful androids reach Earth, they discover the machines they're supposed to fight are clunky and outdated, and now they feel a certain guilt for destroying them. But they also have a duty to their humans to do as is requested of them. The androids rebel and take Earth for themselves, choosing to read literature and create manufactured drugs while falling in love. It's all a bit strange, but could we expect anything less from this series? Riviera, the Promised Land. We're always up for a game which involves a war of epic proportions between angels and demons. It just makes for a great story, and we know things can only get bizarre from here. Your main team of ragtag characters are 4 boy-crazy girls, a talking cat, and an extremely flirtatious fallen angel. Sound weird enough yet? The game definitely gets quite a bit of inspiration from Golden Sun and Final Fantasy while still being able to maintain its own independence. If you're a fan of plot development, this game is perfect, and with every win, you'll slowly accumulate pieces of the story. It feels a bit like a choose-your-own-adventure game where the choices you make influence what pieces of information you'll receive. The game also feels a bit like a dating sim game where the main male must choose which girl's opinion he agrees with the most. These choices will in return influence how the girls feel about him. Oh, and at the end of the game, if you've done everything right, there's a pretty racy hot springs scene that you can review in the main menu image gallery. Not that we know anything about it. RECETTEAR, an item shop's tale. From the cover art, you would think this is a sweet, brightly colored game about a charming little girl who owns an item shop. But oh, how looks can be deceiving. This is a much darker tale than you may have originally assumed. In the game, you're taking on the role of Recette Lemongrass, the proud daughter of a shopkeeper who has decided to skip town. He thinks leading the life of an adventurer is better suited to taking care of his daughter and his shop, and so one day he mysteriously disappears. Recette's father owed a great debt to Term Finance, and now the poor young girl is left to pay off this great debt or live out on the streets. The bank sends a representative to the girl in the form of a small fairy named Tyr. The fairy helps Recette turn her home into an item shop so she can pay back her father's debt and names the shop RECETTEAR. The name is both a pun on racketeer and a combination of Tyr and Recette's name. As you progress, the game feels a lot like a visual novel where you learn more and more about Recette's past. On top of all this, you're basically trying to convince your neighbors they really need a rotten apple and other useless fruit in their lives. The goal is to mark up the fruit you earn in battles with monsters during dungeon crawls. Did we mention you only have 1 month to pay off the debt of 820,000 pix, the in-game currency? We now understand Recette's catchy catchphrase, "Capitalism ho!" Chrono Cross. Okay, so Chrono Cross was often overlooked by fans of the much more popular predecessor, Chrono Trigger. But in our eyes, this was done so entirely unfairly, as Chrono Cross had just as much to offer. We all loved Chrono Trigger because its story was so amazingly adept and well written. But Chrono Cross is capable of exploring individual identity and answering questions like, what would your world look like if you were the only thing that had changed? Or what would life be like if you had never been born at all? It led us to ask a bunch of extreme questions about our own psyche, and maybe some gamers weren't ready for this kind of depth. In the game, you play as a teenage boy named Serge, living in a realm of parallel worlds. You wake up one day to find a rift in your sleepy coastal town and are now faced with an alternate reality where you've died as a child. So in this world, Serge must see how the two parallels have linked while meeting a number of interesting characters along the way. Among some of the characters he meets are a human-rabbit hybrid named Janice, a mysterious harlequin named Harley, and a life-size voodoo doll named Mojo. There were plenty of other strange characters, but we guarantee if you replay this game, you might also start to wonder if fans of Chrono Trigger didn't make it fly under our radars on purpose. If you had never played a JRPG before this video, would you do so now? What was the most bizarre JRPG you've ever played? Feel free to let us know in the comments section below. Thanks for watching and delving into the weird, fantastical world of JRPGs. Please subscribe to The Gamer and join us next time.